Good evening and welcome to Aware on the Air for the 6th week of 2015. Our program is presented by members and friends of Aware, a local peace group. Aware is an acronym for Anti-War, Anti-Racism Effort. I'm Carl Estabrook. Aware was established 13 years ago after the attacks of 9/11-2001 by citizens of Champaign-Urbana who realized that the U.S. government would use those crimes to justify its already long-standing attempts to exercise military control over the Middle East. Mideast gas and oil are needed by America's economic competitors in Europe and Asia, and control of them gives the U.S. an advantage over China, Germany, and other countries, including Russia. Today, the U.S. government is conducting wars throughout the Middle East and promoting an ongoing proxy war against Russia and Ukraine that has already killed more people than America's client Israel killed in Gaza. The U.S. is making war in Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, Pakistan, Somalia, and Yemen. Our government remains what Martin Luther King called it long ago, the greatest purveyor of violence in the world today. But war is good for American business. We as Americans should be concerned with how the government, that supposedly represents us, uses terrorism as an excuse to enhance the profits of the 1%. And it's working. 95% of income gains during the Obama administration have gone to the 1%, while wages have continued to be flat or declining for most Americans. Median family income has continued to decline in the Obama years. The Obama administration has been able to carry on its wars while misleading and misdirecting the American populace. It's clear whom the Obama administration's war policy is working for. Politics in America are no longer a matter of liberalism and conservatism, but neoliberalism, which means enhancing the profits of the 1%, and neoconservatism, which means using foreign military action to do so. With few exceptions, both major political parties are neoliberal and neoconservative, and President Obama is as well. Only a few American politicians on the right and left fringes of the Republican and Democratic parties are actually opposed to the Obama administration's killing of people abroad, or even at home through our militarized police forces, who kill far more people than in other developed countries. President Obama is the 4th president in a row to bomb Iraq. He has now attacked more countries, 8, than the Bush-Cheney administration did. They could only manage to bomb 6. Obama's drone program is the most extreme terrorist campaign of modern times. It targets people suspected of perhaps intending to harm us someday, and any unfortunates who happen to be nearby. Obama's Terror Tuesdays, as White House aides say, continue when he chooses people to be killed with drones. He has killed literally thousands of people that way, including hundreds of children. Meanwhile, U.S. death squads, who report directly to the President's National Security Council, are active already this year in 105 countries around the world. Their activities include killing, kidnapping, we call it rendition, and torture. But in his State of the Union address and elsewhere, Obama continues to lie to the only enemy he really fears, the U.S. populace, and assures us that the wars are winding down. And Americans are convinced by filthy propaganda like American Sniper that what Obama says is true. We'll try to give a better account tonight with commentaries by Ron Szoke and Karen Aram, and we will begin with Ron Szoke. Here be dragons.
This is the phrase that often appeared at the edge of maps prepared during the medieval period in Europe, apparently. It's repeated again in the play that's currently at the Station Theater, 33 Variations, which takes as its premise the question of why Beethoven devoted so much time and effort to preparing 33 variations on a very trivial and banal waltz written by the music publisher Diabelli. So it's an interesting play, and you might think about going to see it. I want to move on to some other locations of dragons, apparently. 2 articles in the past week about military suicides, up slightly in 2014. The Defense Department figures show that suicides among active duty military personnel in 2014 increased slightly over the previous year. They're now averaging about 5.5 per week. So that's an amazing rate for active duty military personnel to be killing themselves. This just in this morning's paper, anti-suicide bill delayed by snow. An expected vote on a Senate bill aimed at reducing suicide epidemic among military veterans was delayed Monday by the weather. It's been rescheduled for today, apparently. The measure is named for Clay Hunt, a 26-year-old veteran who killed himself in 2011. The bill is a response to suicides that on average claim the lives of 22 military veterans every day. So there's this continuing mystery in the minds of military spokesman, the Pentagon, about why this enormous number of suicides in the military, and they just can't seem to figure it out because the obvious answer is unacceptable to them. That is that they're being told to fight a meaningless and futile war in the Middle East, and they're not being given proper support when they return. They are subject to homelessness and increased debts to short-term loan people, and it's in addition to the suicides. So it's an unhappy situation for people who were told wonderful stories about what they would be doing by recruiters. Switching to Iran, there's a right-wing news site called Newsmax, which really rivals Fox News in its fantasies. Headline: Experts, Iran now a nuclear-ready state, missiles capable of hitting U.S. It says we now know enough now to make a prudent conclusion that Iran should be regarded by national security decision makers as a nuclear missile state capable of posing an existential threat to the United States and its allies. Note the repetition of the exact words and phrases used by the Israelis, well, Likud, not all Israelis, of course, and certainly not all Jews, to promote a U.S. war with Iran. So they're still at it and still telling us of the terrible, horrible danger from the dragons that live in Iran. On Ukraine, the U.S. is now considering, according to all the headlines in the past couple of days, lethal aid to the corrupt and incompetent Kiev regime. And there's been a prudent hesitation about this on the part of the White House, apparently. But it's coming. We're being prepared, I think, for some kind of military operation, a proxy war, a hot war against Russia, essentially. Mm-hmm. And this is the most dangerous thing on the immediate horizon, not talking about the longer-term danger of climate change and so on. Finally, for my last point, I want to mention the film American Sniper, directed by Clint Eastwood, which I have not seen yet, but I've read a great deal about. apparently, although this is vocally denied, it's a super patriotic exercise in hero worship. This Chris Kyle, the American sniper who is credited, if that's the word, with over 100 kills in his 4 tours of Iraq and Afghanistan. I just noticed a more recent book ad for another account by one Nicholas Irving called The Reaper, apparently a allusion to the Grim Reaper. He has the most confirmed kills, 33 in a single deployment of about 100 days in Afghanistan. This one is a black man, apparently. His sniper rifle, the SR-25, which he calls the Dirty Diane. He's a member of Special Operations using the NATO standard 7.62 millimeter sniper rifle. It's also used by the Israeli Defense Force. His sergeant is quoted as having said, "After you kill a man, there's no other feeling like it. Mark my words." So we've become the killer nation, the warriors who are prevailing all around the world, according to the official media. And these guys are being presented as heroes who are defending us and our freedom from the dragons abroad. And I'll stop.
Thank you, Rod. You're watching Aware on the Air. We try to give an account of what's going on in the American war-making world, in the world of American war-making, which unfortunately is the only world we've got. And we'll now pivot to Asia with Karen Aram by way of Greece, right, Karen?
Yeah, well, actually, I have a couple things to say. I hope only a couple things. First, I want to comment, Ron, on maybe that's why the suicide rate of our American military is so high, because they have to live with what killing does to a person. I also want to mention that I saw an interview recently of Jesse Ventura, former governor of Minnesota, I think, and he ran for president, whatever. I don't take everything seriously he says, but I had read, my brother's a fan of his, I had read somewhere that he had sued the author of this book, Chris Kyle. They were both Navy SEALs for things that, or there had been a fight in a bar, I don't know, but he actually sued the estate after Chris Kyle committed suicide.
No, he didn't exactly. He was.
What's that?
He was killed by someone who was trying to train a guy with PTSD, okay, apparently,
okay,
at a shooting range, and the guy turned the gun on him, which happens more often at shooting ranges than
what a
you
shock.
might think. Yeah.
Yeah. So it wasn't a suicide, but after this guy died, Jesse Ventura, who's probably loaded with money, I mean, he went after the estate and sued the widow. And I thought that was rather unkind, but he won the lawsuit. And I saw this interview recently. The reason he won the lawsuit was because he was able to prove that so much of what was in this book was lies.
Yeah.
Right.
And now he's going after and he's going to sue, now I'm not sure, but the producers of the film or something or someone related to the movie. So that convinced me that while the film may be entertaining to some, it's full of lies. And it is a propaganda film, there's no question. Okay, next point is that I think some discussion will have to take place related to President Obama's budget plan, which is supposed to benefit the worst corporate tax dodgers. He is, I just got this morning from Common Dreams, and actually the author, I should mention his name, the author is Nadia Prupis. She's a staff writer at Common Dreams, and she's trying to point out that while Barbara Baxter Democrat of California, Boxer, I'm sorry, thank you.
Right.
Boxer, Democrat of California, and Senator Rand Paul, the Republican of Kentucky, worked on a proposal that would tax corporations at 6.5% if they repatriated their foreign profits within 5 years. So this looks good when Obama comes out with something like his proposal would impose a 19% tax on the future overseas earnings of U.S.-based companies, as well as a one-time 14% tax on the trillions in offshore profits that those companies hold right now. However, the revenues from the one-time tax will go supposedly toward fixing our country's. The problem is that they should owe 35% on their accumulated foreign profits rather than 14%. And as we know, Obama often starts negotiations too low, and then we know where we are after that. His minimum tax of 19% supposedly could bring back to the U.S. without being taxed further. So that's an issue. So there's no real incentive to invest in domestic. But your small business, I mean, only our small businesses and our patriotic corporations, few that are here, face the nominal corporate tax of 35%. So what this is going to do is it's rigging the rules, and we desperately need to rebuild America. The anti-tax lobby stops sensible tax hikes. The corporate lobby grabs the opportunity, and we wonder how the 1% has managed to capture virtually all of the country's income growth while the middle class continues to sink, because we've seen this before. So on that topic, I now turn to Greece, who we were all really euphoric when they were elected. And then I read an article that was came out on the 30th, it was just a few days ago, from the World Socialist website, whom I often quote here. I was going to be hesitant about even revealing what was in here because it came off so negative about Syriza. I say Syriza. I'm not sure if that's correct, but
Close
claiming,
enough, yeah.
yeah, claiming that they represent the elite, the bourgeois elite, and that this was proven by their forming a political alliance with the independent Greeks. That's ANEL, which is a right-wing xenophobic split off from the conservative ND. And I thought, well, you know, they're getting really kind of negative here, and they're talking about the military, who was picked for the military, and how they're going to support the military more. And I thought, well, okay, you know, the socialists didn't get elected, the Socialist Party, so maybe they're upset. However, I did see an interview this morning with on Real News Network with a Canadian who is with a banking or a legal firm in Greece representing financial interest, and the whole conversation was his supporting and explaining the decision of the Greece, we'll say the Greece party now, that is saying that they are backing off completely from what this article had promoted or had brought out, was that they are not going to write off the debt. Now, he gave good reasons why they're not going to do that. It would create such instability. But what they're going to do is have debt swaps. That's a creative version of simply, what would you call it, promoting a long-term debt. They're going to spread it out indefinitely. But as what I've been reading, that doesn't necessarily do away with it. It's clear to me from all aspects of what he was saying, from what this article is saying, that their concern is the lack of stability, and that this has not created a good investment environment. They want to bring in investors. So they're clearly looking at privatization, and that does shake up the confidence of some of us who would have supported a little different concern. And one of the things that really seals my concern was the fact that, oh yes, they spoke out and questioned the EU sanctions against Russia. They questioned that, They clearly understand that the U.S. involvement in Kiev and that Russia did not invade the Ukraine. This was mentioned, but then they went ahead and supported it anyway. So that just kind of, there goes my confidence. And I say that, I hate to sound like the doom and gloom person here all the time. I think I outdo both of you two gentlemen.
Oh, go ahead.
There's enough doom and gloom to go around, I think, Karen. Don't worry about using up the supply.
Yeah. But, you know, because I've been up here and I've talked about the election in Sri Lanka, I've talked about the election in Indonesia, and how we were initially going to be, we were euphoric because it appeared that the common man or the good guys that didn't represent the dictatorship were being elected. And so I don't like speaking out against Syriza. And I'm hoping that whatever they do will improve the lot of the people there who are suffering from severe austerity. But I'm just a little worried that our euphoria was a little bit short-lived. Now, I want to mention something that took place, was either this morning or last night on Facebook, in my conversations with a lot of friends around the world who are what we call old Thai hands, or they're actually Thais in Thailand. Somebody posted a posting about some right-winger who had supported the yellow shirts and therefore the military dictatorship, was spreading rumors that the U.S., or he was saying that other people were spreading rumors, and he's spreading rumors that the U.S. is going to invade Thailand. And so this is causing a lot of concern and anti-Americanism amongst the people and fear. And of course, the people who posted this, they're like, this guy's ridiculous. It's absurd. Now, I look at it and I'm thinking, okay, here we go. I've seen this before. and I had to come out and say, you know, he's just spreading rumors just to create confusion. This is what it does. I said the U.S. certainly is not going to invade Thailand. Thailand's our satellite, and they have been. Thailand to the U.S. in Southeast Asia is the same thing as Israel in the Mideast, and they have been for a long, long time. And it's proven by the fact that even after the military coup, they not only did not cut off, I mean, they actually, I think I read an article from Counterpunch here, they've actually increased the military arsenal that they're providing the military junta. You don't do that when you're planning on an invasion, but I mean, and also a lot of the people on this posting, a lot of Thai people are very afraid of what they call Chinese aggression. So again, I had to point out, you know, the Chinese haven't invaded a foreign entity since 1979 when they invaded Vietnam, who is right there in their territory, so to speak, or was at one time. And as we're the U.S., we have so many, and they have no foreign military bases. Where the U.S., we have, I've forgotten the number of military bases around the world.
Nobody knows because it's hard to count them,
Yeah,
but
I said
they're approaching 1,000.
Okay, I said hundreds, so
hundreds is right, certainly.
Okay, I mentioned that, and I mentioned that if any kind of I said, I don't doubt for a moment the U.S. would like to have our military bases back in Thailand. Remember, we had to pull those out after the fall of Vietnam in '75 at the request of many of the left-wingers and socialists and protesters against U.S. naval or military bases there. Of course, they've all, you know, a lot of them were murdered and pretty much eradicated, or from what we know. In any event, what I see taking place, and I did have to mention this, I've mentioned it on the air here, not very recently, that what I do see is a Muslim terrorist threat, supposedly. What we call the usual suspects. A Muslim terrorist threat in the south of Thailand, blaming the separatists for things. For instance, there was a bombing that just went off in Bangkok at a shopping mall. It went off at a weird hour and no one was injured. But this is the kind of thing that the government always, and they've been doing this forever, will come out and blame on Muslim separatists. So I do see the U.S. using this as their reason to possibly set up more military bases in Thailand, but not having nothing to do with Thailand or any I won't call them fictitious Muslim separatists or Muslim terrorists, But I will say that that has been the boogeyman there for a very long time, but rather because of our pivot to Asia based upon our desire to barricade China as much as we possibly can.
There be dragons. Right.
Yes, indeed. You're watching Aware on the Air. We're talking about the situation of American war around the world. Our remit here is to talk about war and racism. Racism, particularly as it's bound up with American war making, and that includes notably Islamophobia and Zionism as racist accounts of circumstances, which ends up with the United States paying for killing people or doing it itself. This is our concern, and it's unfortunately all too serious. It's quite remarkable in a way that how this war making by the U.S. is being presented to the American populace, where of course the U.S. government is not telling the truth at all of what it's doing or why it's doing it, but it's presenting to the U.S. populace the need to be very afraid. To be afraid of Iranian nuclear weapons, to be afraid of Russian aggression, to be afraid of terrorism in the Middle East, and as Karen was just pointing out, to be afraid apparently of China in the Far East. Now, it works, unfortunately. This sort of propaganda goes down pretty well, and our conversation already this evening about the American Sniper movie as a bit of American propaganda to promote this fear of these savages, as the movie terms them, that are being righteously murdered by Americans. Comment on each of these. The Iranian nuclear problem is a construct from the beginning. Israel has literally hundreds of high-tech nuclear weapons. Iran has none. Iran has said that they have no interest in developing a nuclear weapon, but the pro-Israeli and American propagandists point out that Iran has the capability of building a nuclear weapon. So spending as little maybe as 6 months, the Iranians might produce a single pristine Iranian nuclear bomb. Now, what's it going to do with that bomb? If it were to produce such a thing, the only possible function it would have would be as a deterrent against attack by the U.S. or Israel, or Saudi Arabia and anybody else as far as that is concerned, on the notion that the possession of a nuclear weapon, a single nuclear weapon, as a counterstrike possibility means that an aggressor is less likely to attack a country that has such a weapon. Now, that's why Israel and the U.S. want to be sure that Iran cannot deter the American and Israeli military control of the Middle East. As a result, we get these complex negotiations going on between the U.S. government, European powers, and Iran about Iran's capability of making a nuclear weapon. Iran's perfectly happy to talk because one of the things it wants to do is to remove some of the sanctions that have, these are economic limitations, financial limitations that have been placed on Iran by the U.S. and the EU. Now, the problem is, of course, that all of these American policies are connected. The U.S., at the same time, the U.S. is attempting to curb Iran, bring Iran back into the arrangement of the control of Middle East oil and gas that it's had for so long. The U.S. is also pursuing a remarkably belligerent policy in Russia, in the Ukraine, against Russia. And it's doing it by stoking up a fear of Russian aggression. Quite false, as Ron just explained, but this seems to be at the center of American foreign policy concerns these days, and it's immensely dangerous because this really does hold out the possibility of war between East and West, war between the U.S. and Russia, and that war would be, it's hard to see how such a war would not become nuclear in some ways. Karen mentioned Stephen Cohen's interview on Democracy Now! This morning, which is available in the tube. The transcript's available too. It's worth looking at because Professor Cohen explains what the U.S. is doing is at once extremely dangerous and almost apparently uncontrolled. Cohen even suggests that that Barack Obama has been outmaneuvered within the American administration by the war party, by those who really are pushing for a war with Russia. It certainly is the case that American policy has been remarkably belligerent, and it certainly is the case that the U.S. is supporting the semi-fascist government in Kiev that has killed 5,000 people in the eastern part of Ukraine. So the fear of Russia is being used, the fear of Putin himself is being used to promote an extremely dangerous war policy. Finally, the fear of enemies is being used in a most traditional fashion in the Senate. Yesterday, Marco Rubio, Republican of Florida, and Kirsten Gillibrand, Democrat of New York. Notice this is not the Republicans versus the Democrats. This is the Republicans and the Democrats. The Republicans and Democrats led a group of 75 senators in writing a letter to Secretary of State John Kerry, urging him to counter the Palestinian Authority's effort to join the International Criminal Court. The International Criminal Court is a part of the United Nations organization, and the Palestinian Authority has, not at all unreasonably, suggested that it has some grievances as a result of having 5,000 of its citizens killed this last summer, and it would like to be able to bring some of these matters to the International Criminal Court. Now we have a group of 75 senators, American senators from both parties, urging the State Department, the American State Department, to counter this effort, to stop this effort, and to do so by terminating humanitarian assistance to the Palestinian Authority. So not only has Gaza been destroyed, Palestine is occupied illegally by Israel, and now these American senators are calling upon the United States to terminate any support that goes to the Palestinian Authority or to the people of Gaza because they have the temerity to go to court, because they are daring to say to the world, look what's being done to us. The letter further argues, and you have to read this to believe it, the letter further argues that Israel was entirely justified in killing over 1,500 civilians in Gaza last summer. I think I said 5,000 a moment ago, and I was thinking about Ukraine. But 1,500 civilians, including 600 children, according to the account that has been in the international press. This, according to senators, including our own junior senator, who's one of the worst of this lot, Senator Mark Kirk, that was entirely justified. And therefore, the U.S. should take other steps against Israel, other steps against the Palestinian Authority, including the cutting off of humanitarian assistance because of their being so bold as to say that crimes were committed against them. These things are sold to the American people on the grounds of the enemies out there. Here there be dragons, perhaps, as Ron says. And as a result, the U.S. is once again killing people around the world, the greatest purveyor of violence in the world today, as Martin Luther King called it. You're watching We're on the Air. Comments, Ron, on what's been said so far?
Well, a qualification on one of the things Karen said, there's the question of Tibet and whether there's been Chinese aggression against them.
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah,
But
and that's an old argument. Actually, Tibet was a part of China off and on for centuries,
Right.
and it's a strange kind of argument. But there are those who will complain very loudly that Tibet has been victimized by the Chinese.
What year was that?
Oh, I don't remember the details.
That's my point. That's my point.
Yeah.
It was the 50s,
Yeah.
and the last
Yeah,
time.
59.
Yes, but Vietnam was invaded by China in 79.
Yeah.
That is the last time.
Yeah.
We can't say that. Look at all the nations we have. And as I said, yeah, that is the issue with Tibet, and it was somewhat the issue with China. I mean, they've been invading, there have been incursions over into Vietnam. I have Vietnamese friends who are furious when I say that. You know, they've been influenced by so much of Chinese culture for centuries,
Yeah.
and they're quite right. But at the same time, if you look at it from China's perspective, they see Tibet and they see Vietnam, or they did see Vietnam as part of their territory. But as I said, they haven't shown any sense of, I mean, even look at Japan. You know, I mean, they never invaded Japan. I'm sorry, go ahead, you're right. I mean, I know there are Asians who would certainly disagree with me on that, and
Yeah.
rightfully so, rightfully so. But
Yeah.
if you look at what we're looking at now, I mean, you could call it an invasion if you will. I know some people would like to call it an invasion by Chinese into Northern Africa for their resources, but they're carrying pens and checkbooks.
Yeah.
That's a form of invasion,
This is
yes.
a very nice
but
point,
they're carrying
yes.
pens and checkbooks. They're not bringing in their military. The Chinese military, as far as I know, other than Tibet, Xinjiang province, all right, which is in, I think it's the northeast, northwest. Now, I'm sorry, you have to forgive me on this. I am not good with geography, but it's towards the north. That's why I never got there. I think it's towards the northeast. It was originally occupied by China and Turkey, Turkish peoples. So you've got a lot of Turkish uprisings against what they call the occupation of China by a group known as Uyghurs. That's spelled Uighurs, because they're Muslim, and they feel oppressed. Though I have spoken with Chinese government officials in the past when I was working there, who told me that, well, we give better rations to them. I don't know what they're complaining about. They get this, they get that. And I thought, boy, I've heard that before. But the fact is there are dissidents from the Xinjiang province. But here again, if you
And there
look at
have
a map,
been terrorist attacks connected with the
Yes.
Uyghur group, yes.
Absolutely, absolutely. But again, look at a map and you will see, looking at the geography, what China has done is simply try to secure their borders as far as what they have always considered their territory. And it's disputable. I mean, it's all up to dispute because you have to look at it from their perspective as well as the indigenous group's perspective. But if you look at Kiev, as Stephen Cohen was saying, that nothing would have happened if it hadn't been for an uprising by the indigenous people of Kiev. And now look what we're doing. You know, we're looking at a nuclear war in the future if we don't stop our provocations. And I mean, we're not even on the same landmass as any of these nations that we invade. So I rest my case. I know I'm always defending China, but against what my nation is doing, I have a right to criticize my country, my taxpayer dollars, where they're going, not to help the people, but to help our military manufacturers and our corporations to kill people.
Karen, you were talking earlier about the almost 1,000 or perhaps 1,000 American military bases around the world outside of the borders of the United States.
Right.
This comes up every now and then, the contrast is drawn between Russia and China, between the United States on the one hand and Russia and China on the other, in regard to foreign military bases. I like your point about the Chinese invasion of Africa is with the pen and the checkbook.
Yeah.
But the American invasion, of course, is with special forces in these 1,000 bases around the world. Now, I went looking for trying to figure out how many overseas bases or how many beyond their borders bases Russia and China had. And I dug around a little, and there was not a great deal of agreement on it, but I could find finally a dozen, count them, 12 Russian bases outside of the borders of Russia. One at least was the naval base at Sevastopol that was the source of the argument about Crimea. But a dozen seemed to be the number that counted as Russian military establishments not on Russian soil.
Okay, where
and
is
I went,
that place you just mentioned, Carl? Where is it located?
Sevastopol in the Crimea.
Okay, in Crimea,
yeah.
which is
Exactly.
now part
which
of
is
Russia.
now exactly.
Right,
So
okay.
I mean, but the Chinese case was more difficult, and I finally found one Chinese military installation that seemed to be on the borders of China. It might indeed have been the one that you mentioned a few minutes ago.
Shenzhen,
Yes.
yeah, and I don't even pronounce that
And that's all.
perfectly.
But that's it. So, I mean, 1,000 for America, 12 for Russia, 1 for China.
Okay. Because
And
what about Tibet? Are there any military bases in Tibet?
I'm sure the Chinese military is very much invested in Tibet. That's right.
Okay.
But as you both were pointing out, that is in a sense, a separate question. It's not like that's sort of like the U.S. having military bases in California. I mean, China. I think China had control of Tibet far longer than the United States of America had control of California.
Exactly.
So it's the military balance in the world depends very much on the extension and control of the American military, and this is thereby hangs a tail, eh?
Yeah, similar considerations applied to Ukraine being a part of Russia for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, that was the original Russia, was the Kievian regime. But then they kind of moved east to Moscow. And the whole thing is extremely complicated from a historical point of view.
There's a kerfuffle in the news on the internets around the American Sniper film that involves a woman I know slightly called Amanda Taub, who writes for the Vox online news source. Ms. Taub went to school with my daughter, and I've known her for a while. She's been writing, she's an international lawyer and has been writing on human rights issues around the world, including some stuff that I've had some differences with her about in regard to Russia. But she wrote about this American Sniper film, one of the better analyses of the film, not so much as a self-contained work of art, so to speak, but in terms of its political and social effect. What's the result of this movie? What's the propaganda significance of this film? Well, her original article is very much worth reading because she gives a just account, it seems to me, of what the effect of this film and films like it actually is. She was attacked by Bill O'Reilly on Fox News as being a terrorist sympathizer.
God.
And well, hey, look, I mean, if we've descended to the point of mentioning Bill O'Reilly, why, we've got to talk this way. She was a terrorist sympathizer, according to Bill, because she thought this movie had a propaganda effect. And this kerfuffle has called forth comments on various sides about the terrorist sympathizer in the person of this rather conservative human rights lawyer. But O'Reilly has been raging about it and has mentioned her more than once. And the point seems to be to exclude those people who want to think about the real propaganda effect of this film. Seems to work, huh?
Yeah, well, there's an important point there that, of course, she doesn't know what the longer-term effects will be. Nobody does. Some guesses are much better than others. We can conclude from our knowledge of life and what usually happens. But it's an important consideration that we just don't know. But I think it's a very good guess that this will contribute to the rising nationalism and aggressiveness of the American military and the military culture that surrounds us. Even though that less than 1% of Americans are actually actively involved in the military.
Right.
They have enormous influence on American public life and thinking. And we're constantly told that we should honor these people because they are protecting our freedom from these horrible terrorists abroad. So, as often noted on this program, the emphasis has shifted from soft on communism to soft on terrorism.
Right.
And now Amanda Taub apparently is getting the business along the lines of soft on terrorism.
Exactly. And the defense of the war policy of the Obama government is primarily a way of trying to distract people from what's going on. And if they really have to defend the notion that the American military overseas is defending our freedom in 105 countries around the world, they've got a hard job. It's not at all clear. People are not fools. Americans understand very well that what's going on with the American military is not a matter of defending our freedoms, which are in fact not being threatened, even by vicious political groups halfway around the globe. What they in fact are doing are enforcing the American economic control of the world at large that the U.S. has had essentially since the Second World War. The problem is that there are challenges to that control, and to bring that control back into place takes some effort, and we spend literally billions of dollars a year to do that, and kill literally thousands of people for that purpose. That is why Martin King said the U.S. is the greatest purveyor of violence in the world today. That's in whose interest the violence is being purveyed, and it's not a matter of defending our freedoms.
Yeah, what's remarkable to me, and I'd like to have a good account of, a good theory of, is well, not only the demonization campaign that's going on against Putin right now, but the general success, apparently, of these appeals to fear, greed, and hatred that go on in especially the right-wing media all the time. And it's been incredibly influential, apparently. And you talk to people on the street, or your least favorite uncle or something, and you're likely to hear this line again and again, that these brave military people are heroes, and we should honor them, except, of course, giving them decent benefits and medical care and so on after they're no longer on active duty. But that, again, gets to be a very heated kind of argument. So honor the heroes. Huh?
You were in the military, weren't you?
Yeah, 21 months.
There
yeah.
you go. Well,
yeah.
either way, it means you can say anything you want about it. Yes.
Yeah, I was there, right?
Well, no, seriously.
Sure. Yeah, but I was never outside the USA or in combat. But anyway, I was there.
Can I make
Sure.
one point that I noted today is that, and I don't have the numbers quite right, I thought it was 159, it might have been 459, something like that. I think it was 159 in Egypt who were are convicted of whatever crimes and are going to be executed. That's their, and they're joining 1,400 people, and most of them were either members or supporters of the Muslim Brotherhood against, I mean, the Muslim Brotherhood was the democratically elected government, whatever its flaws, it was, until the military coup took over. And I think what makes me so angry about this is that we support the al-Sisi government, the military dictatorship. They are already, I think Mubarak has already been released, his sons are being released. So we're right back to the original Mubarak government group of cronies that were there before the Arab Spring, and the U.S. continues to support, against our own laws, military support. Now, what I'm wondering is if they actually do finally execute all of these people, which I think is really an egregious occurrence.
I don't think it'll happen.
I don't think it'll happen either. I think it's too dangerous for Egypt.
Yeah.
But it does point up, as you say, Karen, how American policy in the region rests upon this alliance of Egypt, the Gulf states, and Saudi Arabia, along with Israel, effectively.
Exactly.
And that alliance is the U.S. uses against the states that it has not brought into control, notably Iran, Syria, Hezbollah, so forth. And a lot of the fighting in the Middle East has to do with the U.S. attempt to use that alliance to exert its control over the region. And therefore we put up with things like this outrageous sentencing going on in Egypt.
Exactly.
Haven't we been through this before with Egypt?
Yes.
They have these mass trials, and they condemn hundreds of people at a time for being soft on the Muslim,
Democracy.
yeah, the Muslim Brotherhood
Uh-huh.
They're soft on
is
freedom.
usually the charge, but then they're all condemned to death. But then the sentence is never really carried out.
No, but it gives them an excuse to incarcerate them
Sure,
indefinitely.
sure.
Yeah. So
we
we're
should-
right back where we were pre the spring uprising.
We should mention that this morning's news has to do with the burning alive, apparently, of a hostage by the ISIS group, the Caliphate, and the threat by Jordan to execute the Al-Qaeda prisoners that it was going to swap for the Jordanian pilot who was apparently executed today. These horrors do a great deal to support the U.S. policy in the region, although, of course, the horrors are more a result of that policy than an opposition to it. The production of ISIS is bound up with the various states that the U.S. has supported in the region for so long, notably Saudi Arabia. The ISIS group is energized by the right-wing extremist Islamic party that dominates Saudi Arabia, that is the Wahhabi party, or we're talking here about both theology and politics, of course. There is a very good article in the, I will put on the AWARE website, by Patrick Coburn, probably the most knowledgeable Western commentator on the Middle East, about the necessity to understand the source and depth of the jihadist caliphate, ISIS, in order to have any sense of understanding what American policy might be on it. In the first place, policy should be an international policy. The United States should stop saying that it is killing people in the Middle East because of ISIS. The United States should submit an international problem like ISIS to the proper forum, which is the United Nations. And the United Nations, according to the United Nations Charter, is the only body that can authorize joint military action against a rogue state as ISIS or the Caliphate appears to be. Instead, the U.S. uses this as a propaganda as an occasion to justify its ongoing control, its ongoing war in the region, just as it used the 9/11 attacks on this country for that purpose. Final comments?
Do you want to mention anything about the newly formed
Oh.
Green Party?
Yes, we do have to mention some upcoming events.
We had a public forum, yeah.
We're happy to say that the Green Party in Champaign-Urbana has been reestablished. A good session a couple of days ago with the former gubernatorial candidate of the Green Party, Rich Whitney. We'll have material about that on our Facebook page. We also have had requests to participate in AWARE's anti-war demonstration. We've been holding these demonstrations for most of the last 13 years, usually on a monthly basis. The demonstration this month is this coming Saturday, February 7th, 2 to 4 p.m. at Main and Neal Streets in Champaign. All are welcome to come and join in our anti-war demonstration. And one of the things we'll be doing at that demonstration is welcoming the reappearance of the Green Party in Champaign-Urbana, because the Green Party is also anti-war and anti-racist.
We're
Also,
putting the
go ahead.
market- The market.
Please go ahead.
Yeah. Well, we also are holding the market. I know we're scheduled for the market the Saturday morning at 8.
No,
at
not
the
this
Lincoln
Saturday.
Mall.
Not until the 21st.
Oh, I thought it was the 7th.
There is one.
No, seriously. I hope it's not. But
There is one upcoming event that I wanted to mention. The
made a
Campus
check mark
Faculty
for one of those
Association at
that we have.
UIUC
February
will
7th.
host
Well,
a
that's one
forum
of
entitled Shared Governments and Academic Freedom, Where Are We Now? And that forum, that has to do with the egregious denial of academic freedom in the Stephen Salaita case. The forum is set for tomorrow, Wednesday, February 4th, at 7:30 p.m. at the University YMCA on Wright Street. So there are other upcoming events like this, and we will try to post some notes about these on the AWARE Facebook page. You have been watching AWARE on the Air, presented by members and friends of AWARE, the anti-war, anti-racism effort of Champaign-Urbana, a local peace group, in the 6th week of 2015. Our show is produced and directed by Jason Liggett, thanks to whom also this program and others like it will be available on YouTube. And do see the Facebook page for AWARE. Finally, AWARE honors those who reveal the crimes of the U.S. government, which the rest of the world knows about, but Americans don't. Manning, Assange, Snowden, and others. Did you see where a Toronto high school got Assange to, got Snowden to speak to the high school class?
Really?
Yeah. You know, it's not something American universities are doing, but a Canadian high school did. Now, this is Carl Estabrook for Ron Szoke, Karen Evans-Levy, Stuart Levy, Karen Aram, David Johnson, David Green, and other members and friends of AWARE, saying in the words of the late Edward Murrow, good night and good luck.